Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another entry into the opening paragraphs playlist here on the channel. In the opening paragraphs playlist, what we do is we sort of read an opening paragraph of a short story or a novel and try to see what it is that we can glean from this, both as a reader and as a writer, as a student of literature in general. Today's short story comes to us from my handy-dandy book known as literature. The gray book, if you will. Not quite the red book, a little bit different. More words in here. The short story in question, you should Google the red book if you don't know what that is. Very interesting. I saw a copy of it at the Nelson Atkins in Kansas City. Very tempted to try to steal it. The short story in question today, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I don't know what Shirley Jackson knew about the Red Book, but I think she would have been a big fan. The opening paragraph for The Lottery, anytime I can find an excuse to talk about the lottery, anytime I can find an excuse to talk about Shirley Jackson, I want to do so. And the opening paragraph of The Lottery reads as such. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny, with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely, and the grass was richly green. The people of the village began to gather in the square, between the post office and the bank, around 10 o'clock. In some towns, there were so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 26th. But in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery, took less than 2 hours. So it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner. Mostly. So I introduced this video with the introduced this video with the idea that this series is mostly about what it is that we can discern from an opening paragraph. How it is that that opening paragraph is distinct, how it is that that opening paragraph is... So, for example, there is a video... Where am I at here? 1 second. There is a video in this playlist, I believe it's the very first video in the playlist, about what I believe to be one of the greatest opening paragraphs in the English language. I really do believe that. Now, that is subjective. There is, sort of counterintuitively, something subjective and something objective about literature. So, is, I don't know, is Of Mice and Men the greatest book ever written? I could make the case that yes, but that is a subjective opinion. Is Of Mice and Men one of the greatest books ever written? Objectively, we can probably say yes, because of the duration of time for which this novel has lasted, and because of the depth of impact that novel has on the people who read it. So there's an objective and subjective here. I am willing to give you the fact that American Psycho has one of the greatest opening paragraphs of all English language is a subjective opinion. But just listen to it. Just listen to it. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here, is scrawled in blood-red lettering on the side of the chemical bank near the corner of 11th and 1st, and is in print large enough to be seen from the back seat of the cab as it lurches forward in the traffic leaving Wall Street. And just as Timothy Price notices the words, a bus pulls up, the advertisement for Les Mis on the side, blocking his view. But Price, who was with Pierce and Pierce and 26, doesn't seem to care, because he tells the driver he will give him $500 to turn up the radio. Be My Baby on WYNN, and the driver, black, not American, does so. I think that that is one of the greatest opening paragraphs in all of the English language because of how distinct it is. You're not getting that opening paragraph anywhere else. You're probably not getting that opening paragraph from any other writer. That's Bret Easton Ellis, baby. It's on the page. It's real. It is now. As Chuck Palahniuk is a fan of saying, it is very now. This opening paragraph, however, I think is pretty brilliant because of how mundane it is. For anyone who doesn't know, spoilers, this short story, The Lottery, is about the lottery in which a human will be sacrificed. Someone's gonna die, and not like guillotined, no. Someone is being stoned to death. And I don't mean stoned to death, much different story. Someone's being killed with rocks in an otherwise civil place. This is a place, by the way, where is it here? That has a bank and a post office. A bank and a post office. This is wherever you live. That point has to be made. So, I'm going to read the opening paragraph one more time, just so that with that in mind, we can kind of process it. The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny. With the fresh warmth of a full summer day, the flowers were blossoming profusely, and the grass was richly green. The people of the village began to gather in the square, between the post office and the bank, around 10 o'clock. In some towns, there were so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 26th, but in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took less than 2 hours, so it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home before noon dinner. That is so mundane. The slickest thing here, and Shirley Jackson is just masterful. If you've not read much Shirley Jackson, I haven't read anything from Shirley Jackson that's not worth reading. The most brilliant thing here is that this opening paragraph absolutely lulls you to sleep. You're asleep. You don't want to read the rest of this story. Probably one of the reasons that this short story has survived so long is because if you've read this short story, probably you had to. Probably this was assigned to you. Probably you had no choice and you had to write a paper about it. Probably you had to put an entry on the computer. You had to write 500 words about this story. So you had to finish it. You didn't want to. No one wanted to finish this story after the opening paragraph. And it prepares you for nothing. It prepares you for nothing that you're about to get in this story. That's the brilliance of it. This story is so mundane that it lets you believe you're in the same place you woke up. You're right where you started the day. You're going to end the day someplace different. The next thing I want to talk about is that the lottery. The lottery is not just the title, it's mentioned here in the opening paragraph, and it is mentioned in the multiple. Some places are so big that the lottery takes 2 days, but here we get it through in a couple hours. In today's society, and this short story was published in the 50s, I believe, 48. Is that right? Yeah, 48. This short story was published in 1948. I believe they had the same connotation for lottery then. So 48, the draft lottery is also referred to largely as a lottery, being drafted into the military. But lottery often means you've won something. The lottery, I won $1 million in the lotto, right? So you are herein prepared, especially considering that so many different places have this lottery, and everyone's in the square. No one's shirking this responsibility. Everyone's there. You get the idea that the lottery is a positive thing, that someone has won something, someone's going to win something. Everyone's showing up with their bright eyes and bushy tails because someone's going to win something. It's not where it goes. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit is the fact that this opening paragraph does say that there is a lottery other places. This isn't unique to this town. This is tradition. Whatever this lottery is tradition and is larger than the village in question. The village in question is just one place where this lottery ends up taking place. In fact, like it says, it's not that big a deal here. Not as big a deal as it is other places. Other places, they really got a plan for this sucker. It's just so brilliant. Shirley Jackson's just so damn good. Another thing here is what we're looking at time-wise. Largely when you're examining things from a symbolic perspective. Actually, no, I want to talk about this real quick. The risk of this short story. This is one of the greatest short stories I think I've ever read, right? One of the greatest short stories in a practical way, in a societal commentary way, that you're going to read in an English literature degree curriculum. The risk of this short story's opening paragraph is immense. So one of the things you hear as a writer is you never want to start a story with the weather, and you never want to start a story with a character waking up. These things are too cliche. You start your short story in either of those ways, and no one's going to read it. It's just going to get rejected. You're going to put all of this effort into a story, send it someplace, and they're going to say, no, thank you. Thanks, but you can keep this. We don't want it. The immense risk that is this opening paragraph being so boring that when Shirley Jackson submitted it, there was huge risk that the editor, whatever editor it was, and this editor could hardly be blamed. The editor could have gone, the morning of June 27th was clear and sunny and fresh. We're starting with the weather. No, thank you. Probably this is going nowhere. No, thank you. The ever-loving risk that was this opening paragraph. For this short story to have survived that and ended up so anthologized, and to end up in the minds of so many people, Shirley Jackson having influenced Richard Matheson, credited her, Stephen King credited Shirley Jackson, basically anyone whose writing career began 70s-ish and was in the weird, was in the paranormal, was in the horror genres, at least read Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson to that strain and timeline of creator, of writer. It's sort of like individuals who say, it's sort of like the number of individuals who would credit Freddie Mercury for inspiring them to sing. Probably it's everyone. You just might not think of it when you're asked the question, right? There's hardly anyone in the world who's ever opened their mouth and has not at some point tried to be Freddie Mercury in a singing capacity, and failed, by the way. But Shirley Jackson is probably so synonymous with the weird that anyone who doesn't credit her as an inspiration simply doesn't realize it, or simply thought that the idea was so mundane it wasn't worth mentioning. Anyway, here what we have is a story that begins in the summer. Ends in the summer too. It ends a couple hours later, right? But here we are in the summer. Traditionally, when you look at things Winter is used to symbolize death. Spring is used to symbolize birth. Those things are pretty obvious. Fall is used to symbolize the reward, is used to symbolize the good part of life, is used to symbolize, if you were putting an age bracket on it, 38 to 50, right? Somewhere in there. Because this is the time in life when you're supposed to start reaping the rewards of all the work that you've done, which leaves only one season for the summer to represent. The summer represents the work part of life. The summer represents the hard part of labor. The summer represents the getting it phase, right? The 20s, the 30s, the getting it phase where one is truly alive. For anyone interested, a good novel, I can't find it, a good novel to really encapsulate the summer phase of life, Now is the Hour, written by Tom Spanbauer. A lot of the summer phase of that novel is really intriguing symbolically. But you've got here the thrust of life in symbolism. You've also got the morning invoked here, but not like 4 in the morning. You have people getting ready for noon dinner. Maybe you've got a southern thing going on there, hard to say. But this summer, midlife, strength, the morning or the midday hours, midday not how we think of them now, but how they were thought of when people rose with the sun and went to bed with the sun. Also, June 27th, nearly the exact middle of the year. So you're looking at all of these things pinpointing the work thrust of life. You're being set up. You're being set up, once again, by Shirley Jackson. You're being set up by Shirley Jackson to expect a story about winning. You're being set up by Shirley Jackson to expect a story about the good connotation of lottery. You're being set up by Shirley Jackson to expect a story, a comedy, not a tragedy. It's not what we get. I don't know if this would have... so playing into that day, June 27th, I don't know if this would have played into Shirley Jackson's idea or not. It is pretty generally accepted that there is a large religious connotation to this short story. We have the presentation of something extremely macabre and dangerous and deadly, someone being murdered by the entire town because it's tradition. We have here the acceptance of ideas, good ideas, bad ideas, because they were written down at some point. It's a religion. There is a very easy argument to be made that this is about religion. June 27th, 1844, Joseph Smith was murdered. Joseph Smith, of course, being the founder of the Church of Latter-day Saints, founded the Church of it's Mormonism, right? That's Latter-day Saints, isn't it? Forgive me, I'm blanking right now. But Joseph Smith, Mormonism, murdered because he decided to say, you know that New Testament. I wrote the third. I got the third in my back pocket here. Large story there, very interesting. Said that Jackson County, Missouri, was the Garden of Eden. So maybe he was onto something. Hard to say. Onto a couple things. Here's another thing. Full summer. Flowers blossoming. grass richly green. We're being set up. We're being set up yet again. We're being set up to believe this is going to be a good story. This is going to be a positive one. This is going to make us feel good. Nope. But in addition to that, so one of the most impressive things that I think happens from time to time in a horror novel, horror story, is something that Joyce Carol Oates does very well in Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been? What's his name? Arnold Friend? The bad guy. I can't remember his name. Arnold Friend shows up, and we get him from the young girl's perspective. And he's described to us one way. But the closer we get to him, the more we see him. Each time we see him, he changes just a little bit. Not in reality, he's always looked this way. We're just realizing that he looks different than we knew. And each time we see him, we realize that there were little details before that should have set us off. And it's one of these things that that a master storyteller in the horror genre does so well. Gives you the idea, and then lets you know it's different. But you knew that. And it's different in a worse way. But you knew that too. You knew this all along. It changes things. They change things in your mind's eye. So Arnold Friend, I think that's his name, slowly starts to look older. So he is an older and older man that has been pursuing this younger girl. Starts to look rougher and rougher. And he's a rougher guy who's been pursuing this very soft young woman. Starts to look less and less human as he's pursuing this girl who's very humanly at home having a quarrel with her family. So just very alien versus her very sort of traditional household scene that in which she is caught up. So here we have these things with this idea of the positive being presented to us, but we also have some things that we're going to have to think back on later. We have these ideas of the full summer day, these ideas of the flowers blossoming, these ideas of richly green grass. But our town only has 300 people. If this town is going so swimmingly, so well, if everything is so idyllic, why haven't they prospered? Why haven't they prospered to that great amount where the lottery does take 2 days? Right? It is a pruning. The last thing that I want to talk about here, the last idea that I want to really delve into, is the very final phrase in this opening paragraph. I'm going to read it one more time because I've been jabbering for a while. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny, with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely and the grass was richly green. The people of the village began to gather in the square between the post office and the bank around 10 o'clock. In some towns, there were so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started on June 26th. But in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took less than 2 hours. So it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner. The phrase I want to talk about, allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner, sounds very workaday. Sounds, okay, well, we are where we are. We've got to get this done and then we'll go home. When you understand that the getting this done is someone that everyone in this town knows. There's only 300 people. If you don't know this person intimately, you've seen them. The idea here that everybody's just going to go home and eat lunch after stoning someone they know, everyone here is just going to go home and have lunch. After bludgeoning to death a person that they all know, it's terrifying. This is another one of those examples of something that is planted, and then when we look back on it, when we read it a second time, when we process it from our memory to our working imagination, changes just a little bit, like Arnold Friend growing wrinkles. The idea is planted that, oh, what we're going to do here is we're just going to get through this thing, then we'll get done, we'll go have dinner, we'll go have supper, dinner, we'll go have dinner, and then we'll go back to the work day. Boy, that sure is a nasty experience when what that something is grabbing a rock and hurling it at your neighbor. But that's the beauty of this story, is that every single element, every detail, it's saccharine. Everything here is so saccharine that once you realize to what it is that saccharine taste is contributing, it's pretty evil. You're forced to re-examine everything. Now, it is generally accepted, pretty generally accepted, that this short story has religious connotations. Shirley Jackson, being a master, and the masters, all the masters really do, no matter what they're writing about, they're really writing about the individual. So even from this opening paragraph, if we don't go into the old man Warner, if we don't go into all of the individuals who happen in this story, if we just start here and we know the end, that someone is stoned to death, what we are left to do to extract the individual is to ask the question, is religion in general, be that theism, be that cultism, be that tribalism, is this irrational acting as a unit, this irrational following of tradition, is this irrational following of those things because someone told us to do them, is that in itself part of the human experience? Is that in itself something to which we are all subject? In this story, we understand after this opening paragraph, all of the villagers are subject to it. All of the villagers are subject to it. Is the comment there rooted in this opening paragraph? That what we're subject to is simply part of the human experience, something which none of us can escape, and to which all of us at some point will succumb. That is one hell of a commentary for someone such as a writer. Writers being, in some sense, the fool from the old court, right? Writers being those people whose very definition is incumbent upon their ability, whose very worth as a writer is incumbent upon their ability to call out these things that make all of us not an individual, through an individual in writing. What a hell of a commentary for a writer to decide to extract. That is all I have for this, the opening paragraph of The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. There are many videos in this short story opening paragraph playlist here on the channel already. But also, I've got a discussion about the lottery, a short story discussion about the lottery. There is a review for the lottery on the channel, and there's plenty of Shirley Jackson here on the channel. So if this is something that you enjoyed, hitting that like button really does help me out here on the channel. If you are here by chance but not design, consider being here by design more often, hitting that subscribe button, and maybe even the bell notifications so that my stunning face pops up in your suggested feed more often, and I hope to see you in the next video.